Hello, everybody. I'm Frank Stanishi of Open Forum, candid, frank, and live, of course. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV Sticks, Roku Sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, on Open Forum, joining me is Paul Jonathan Saguil. He is the Liberal candidate for Willowdale, and he's a self-described community advocate. And these days, being a community advocate can mean so many things, right?
Yeah, I can talk about the advocacy that I've done, but I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show, Frank, and I really appreciate getting the chance to tell your viewers about my story, and hopefully I'll get to meet some of them in person very soon. But I just want to say thanks again. This is a great opportunity to share my views, my values, and what the Liberal Party stands for.
Yes, and stand up to the challenge that some media members that may be unfair challenge you. So it's a good test for you
Yeah.
moving forward. All kidding aside, I really appreciate you being here as well. You're very kind to share your time with us. Who you are, what you are, is a very important thing today, because really, you're a human rights lawyer by
Yes,
vocation.
I practiced constitutional and human rights law. I practiced civil litigation. In my current job, I'm on the front lines of, complying with sanctions and fighting financial crime. And so I think these are all important experiences that I can bring to the table. But you said it at the outset. What I've been fighting for and what I'm advocating for is about equal opportunity and access to justice for folks, but also to make everyone's life a little bit easier and a little bit better. I know we've had a hard time during this pandemic, and it's partly because of the way the current government has managed things. And so what I've been advocating for is just better government. And having good people in government is, I think, the first step in sort of fixing a lot of the issues that we have and the challenges that we have ahead of us.
Yeah, the Liberals are in power federally. You're looking to become a member of the Ontario legislature, an MPP, in other words. There is a limit to what MPPs can do. We do have also, you talk about, those first things you talked about today with what's happening with the Russian Federation, what's happening with Parliament Hill and the truckers convoy. That alone speaks directly to a conversation that I think it sounds like you're well versed in.
Yes, and of course, the fundamental question that we have before us is what kind of society do we want? Do we want a society that's divided? Do we want a society that leaves people on their own and fend for themselves? Do we want a society that isn't governed by the rule of law, but is just swayed by powerful interests or swayed by the mob? And at the heart of it, what we're fighting for is obviously a liberal democracy and a society that takes care of each other, and having people who have those values at the federal and at the provincial government matters because then they can work in cooperatively together. I
Yeah,
understand what some of the concerns have about interjurisdictional issues and whatnot, but at the end of it, it's about being able to work together towards common goals. And I believe that's what the Liberal Party here in Ontario has is we've got a plan and we've got great candidates that are coming together to bring their experiences to bear on the issues that are facing our province today.
yeah. One of the things that you hear from Stephen Del Luca, the Liberal leader, is inclusion. Having a better representation of politicians that represent the people and the places they are coming from. By your definition, how does that work better now as opposed to how it's been?
Well, I think we've developed our understanding about um, the franchise and what it matters. Who gets to vote and then who gets to participate in politics. And I think over time we've gotten better at making these spaces more inclusive. And what Stephen Del Duga committed to as a leader is to make sure that the team that he puts forward, to represent Ontarians, are reflective of the very diverse province that we have. And I myself, I'm a product of that. I'm a product of the diversity of this city and the diversity of this province in my own experiences. But also in my own lived experience, being a Filipino, it would be the first time that we'd have somebody at Queen's Park if I was lucky enough to be elected. And
in
so
20
in
yeah, sorry.
2022, that's right.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest and fastest growing populations, and and it's interesting, right? Because the more that we have diverse voices, the more that we can bring our experiences to bear and see how laws impact us, policies impact us in different ways, and that allows us to better fine tune those laws and policies for the future. And I think that's why it's important to have an inclusive mindset when we're building a team, when we're building a government. And the team that we have together is truly reflective of the different walks of life, the different experiences that Ontarians have. And I really hope that when you see the team that we're putting forward, that every Ontarian can see themselves in this Liberal Party.
Hand up as opposed to hand out.
I think that's a false choice. I think at the end of the day, what we're talking about is whether or not we have a society or a bunch of atomized individuals who are just fending for themselves. And in a society, what we do is we build each other up because we all grow, we all benefit when everyone is thriving. We help people who may not come from privilege, may not come from a background where they have all the resources that they need. But we also build people up to ensure that the economy grows, because the bigger the pie, the more that we can share in it. This is not a zero-sum game. And I think that's the false choice that we've been placed with, that somebody's gain automatically results in somebody else's loss. And I don't think that that's true.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just here to ask questions because I see things going on, and I'm asking based on what I see. For example, one of the concerns for many Canadians, existing Canadians, is that they feel like they're being pushed out. Here in Southern Ontario, in particular, we're very diverse, and we've been diverse for a very long time, and no one should be surprised that a person like yourself and anyone who's visible should have an equal opportunity, not just to be a politician, but to go to school, to learn, and to not be frozen out because of their background. I think another one of the challenges, speak to the challenge of ensuring that education for people it's open to everyone, because some know or some feel that education is almost a privilege.
Yeah, so this issue is very near and dear to my heart, and a lot of the advocacy that I've done in the community is about opening up these spaces. I work in corporate Canada. I'm a lawyer by training, and I fought to open up these spaces to people from different backgrounds, people who might not have ever imagined themselves to be, working on Bay Street or um, working as a lawyer in a big firm, or for that matter, becoming a judge, becoming a CEO, becoming a tech entrepreneur. These are the kinds of things that I've fought for. And I know how important that is because, frankly, all of us, um, wherever we come from, come to Ontario, come to Toronto with a dream. And that's, to build a better life for ourselves and the next generation. And education is one of those important things, one of those important pathways. Now, education means different things for different people because we all have different skills and different ways to contribute to society. And what I hope to do as part of the Liberal Party is to open up those pathways and make things accessible for people who may not have either the resources, the networks, or the background knowledge to access these spaces. I've helped build mentorship programs. I've helped build communities of new talent coming into organizations, build pipeline of talent so that when the employers are looking to fill the jobs of the future, that they're not just looking at one segment of society, but they're looking at all segments, and they're bringing in people from different, ethnic groups, sexual orientations, people with different abilities, people from different classes, and people from different economic backgrounds. And I think that's really important, that you shouldn't have to know someone or have a secret network to be able to get ahead. Everyone should have that equal opportunity, and that's what we're fighting for.
Yeah, and I suppose, I guess, I don't mean to be presumptuous, but as important as it is to open opportunities, it's also to open the hearts and minds of everybody out there who may feel like they're being alienated, getting the message to them that there's a way.
Yes, and I think that's obviously the ongoing project that we have as we build our society is to make sure that nobody gets left behind. I know that this is a major concern for probably a lot of viewers as to what the new post-pandemic economy will look like. And there's always this question, if there's going to be winners, then there has to be losers. And my sense of that is there actually has to be a way for us to make sure that everyone can have access to the basic needs that they have, and whether that's considering forms of benefits that we can all share, access to re-education or retraining pathways. So if certain industries are no longer viable in the economy of the future, that we can help people have a leg up and find new ways to contribute. And for people who are at the end of their career or looking to retire, people who are older and looking to wind down, that they can have a dignified life in their retirement, that they can have a dignified life as seniors. And that's what we're looking to build, is end to end, looking at different aspects of how we can make sure that nobody is left behind.
One of the things that fits under basic needs, I've basically put it this way when I ask my questions and how I think. There are basic needs that human beings need within, for example, in our country or our province or in our city. Right? There's a list of basic needs, and one that I find so obvious, but it seems to be one that you have to wrestle with as a politician and as a new politician. I think you'll find out it is about minimum wage and it being a livable wage. Is there a way to arrive at a point where someone can work and live on the income that they have? Because we know that there are a lot of people who are struggling because a livable wage is not what they get.
I think there are different dimensions to that problem, but for sure, one of the first things that we will have to tackle is, the fact that this government, when it came in, canceled, the minimum wage increases that were put in by the previous Liberal government. And so we have to catch up to where we should have been in the first place. But then we have to also think about what the future means for uh, for affordable living in a place like the city of Toronto, but more broadly across Ontario. What does it mean to have the basic necessities? And we have different aspects of our plan that will be coming out that will address those questions about affordable housing, about being able to get the type of work that will allow us to sustain ourselves and our families, that will allow us to participate in the global economy of the future, that will prepare our industries to be able to take advantage of new markets. That's part of the plan that we're building. But I want to make sure that folks understand that what we're trying to do is make sure that every part of Ontario is part of this conversation. Every part of Ontario is part of the considerations that we're bringing forward. So we're not just going to be focusing on discrete pockets, but making sure that every Ontarian feels like their needs are being addressed.
Yeah, because after all, if you live in Toronto, expenses are different than you live, for example, where I live. I live up in Simcoe. The cost of living is a little bit less. Now, not the groceries, the rent is less, the homes are less, those kinds of basic expenses are less. So it's kind of hard to square the circle of how much minimum wage is worth across the board. So that's one of the challenges I think that every government's going to have is how they deliver what you're talking about. So essentially, what you're telling me then is it's more or less a theme as opposed to a number.
I think that's exactly it. This is about the whole picture of what it means to provide people the resources that they need to succeed, and it is about taking care of some basic needs, and some of those might be um, through exactly legislation like setting a floor for minimum wage, but it could also be the different dimensions of what it means to have a sustainable existence and a thriving existence in a 21st century city like Toronto, but also in communities like Simcoe in Northern Ontario, in Kingston. We want to particularize the solutions so that it meets local needs, but have an overall plan that what we're hoping to do is not leave anyone behind.
From your perspective, we're going through a real tumultuous time. Your leader has asked that Russian vodka be not sold at the LCBO. Um, i- that sounds like an oversimplification for me to just say that. But in a more, if you don't mind diving into that situation a little deeper, from your perspective as a human rights lawyer, why is it so important for Ontario and the Liberal Party to take that kind of stance?
I think the stance that we're taking with respect to the challenges that are being faced in by the Ukraine today is about standing up for human rights, standing up for the rule of law, standing up for the international legal order that we've spent almost a century building. You know, after World War II, we saw the devastation, and we don't want a repeat of what happened in Europe during World War II. And I think making strong statements, taking strong measures against brutal regimes like Putin's regime in Russia today is an important aspect of who we are as Ontarians, the kind of values that we have. A lot of us, a lot of us here in Ontario come from states, come from situations where there was no rule of law, where we fled these types of situations. And if we can do something to help, if we can do something to help set an example or to help sway the leaders of the world today to take a different path, then we should do that. And I think having a leader who takes that stance is exactly the kind of leader that Ontarians need right now. We don't need a leader who coddles, authoritarian uh, individuals or um, people who don't believe in the rule of law. We can't
That
play footsie with those types of elements in our society because we know very well what happens is if you play footsie with them, they will take over. And we know what's happened in our own backyard when we give them that space.
Yeah, you're more than aware of the status of the world and how it's changing, and sadly, in many ways, moving away from democracy. Where we have this, basically people populism that I don't even want to define it because I don't understand it because it doesn't come at me in one direction. It comes at me in many directions. But I guess the point to the question I'm asking is we live in a world today where in politics and the vocation you've chosen to take where it's completely acceptable to be untruthful. And to me, that's something I'm having trouble grasping with. And by that I mean I'm beginning to question almost everything and we seem to be distracted. How can your experience help your community, your MPs, your government to understand some of the traps because you've seen it all. There's all kinds of traps we can fall in, terms like dog whistle, false flag, all these wonderful terms that what they relate to is denying people their rights.
No, I appreciate the concern that you're raising, and it is one of the things that really drove me to run, and particularly at this moment in our history and at this moment in our sort of social development. It's important to have people in public office who represent the values that we want to stand up for and represent what I believe are the very best aspects of our human condition. We want people of integrity. We want people who will tell the truth. We want people who will be honest and straight up with us and talk about the challenges that are ahead of us, not with platitudes, not with gimmicky, um, you know, ballot ballot box initiatives, but really talking to the people as they are grown-ups and wanting to hear that from our politicians is something that everyone has been asking for. You know, in my job, one of the things that I am responsible for is fighting corruption, fighting bribery, and making sure that our financial system isn't used for that. And I know what it is, when bribery and corruption infests government, people lose trust. And then we start thinking that we might as well fend for ourselves. And that's not the society that I I wanted to grow up in, or that's not a society that I would want the next generation to grow up in. It's not a society that my parents came here for. And I know many of your viewers feel the same way. Again, a lot of us came from places where government was broken or the people that were in power did not represent the interests of the people who put them there. And I think that's why when I come forward, I'm really coming forward from that perspective, that I've seen what happens when things aren't working, but I also have a track record of trying to fix things and doing it from a place of integrity.
Mr. Saguil, the one of the problems that I see in society today, and I want your opinion on it. We don't have the time to read the story. We concentrate on the headline.
Well, obviously everybody has many competing priorities, and I want to thank the viewers especially for taking the time to listen at this time. I know you've got this pandemic environment to deal with. People have kids in school, people are worried about their health, people are worried about the jobs of the future. And so I think the other thing that's important is having a government that is competent, having people in positions of authority or making decisions who have some experience to bring to bear on those issues, rather than people who may have just known someone or known the right people and then somehow find themselves in a position of authority. That's not the way we should be running government. We should be actually relying on people's experiences and the ones that are actually brought to bear on the issues that are important to us. So that's another thing that I've tried to emphasize in our conversation. And what our leader, Stephen Del Duca, has tried to emphasize is to bring forward a team that's ready to govern, that is competent and ready to govern, that will make decisions based on the advice of experts, but will also make decisions based on their understanding of the communities that they're representing, and not just focusing on their friends in the background or their cronies in the background. And really, with a team like this, I really hope Ontarians can see that we're fighting for the shared future that we know is precarious, but we are hopeful because we know the resilience and the strength of this province. We know we have the talent and the resources to succeed. We just need people steering the ship who will unleash all of that potential into the 21st century.
I think it's important also. I hate to throw these phrases out, but it's the only way I can do it because I don't want to talk for an hour. I want you to do the talking. You know, um, uh, the world today, Canada, Ontario, Frank, stay in Ontario. I'll stay in Ontario. Uh, do we have the ability as people, is the question I ask myself all the time when I do programs like this. Do we have the ability to challenge ourselves, challenge our thinking, challenge our beliefs? In another term, that means listening. Do you feel that's important for political parties today who, in some people's minds, they feel they're siloed, their followers are siloed? We're separating into different media groups, and those media groups are determining this. How important is it to really stand up for what I think a world that you come from? You come from a world where views are challenged. You stand in front of a judge and you tell your story. Never mind the baloney that, outside the courtroom that is, thrown. At some point, the rubber's got to hit the road. How can you help in the contribution, which I think is important, in challenging our views so that we get to the truth and don't get derailed by, innuendo and false statements?
I absolutely agree that politicians need to listen. We're there to represent, the broad interests of the communities where we come from. And that's one thing that we've been doing as a team. Each of us are, going out into our own respective communities. We're also gathering around specific questions and issues that we all care about, and we're reaching out. We've been meeting with stakeholders. We're going out into the community, whether it's virtually or, as public health guidelines allow us, small meetings, small gatherings in person. But I absolutely agree. We need to listen because a lot of people have spent during this time in the pandemic really isolated. And I think that echo chamber that we see online has made some of these conversations a little bit more difficult to have across differences. And so I think as we go into this campaign, I think it's an important time for all of us to take stock of where we have traveled as a community, as a province, and where we want to go together. And I believe that that's the message that we're going forward is we're here to listen and we're here to bring these concerns together. And then our plan will hopefully reflect the priorities that have been shared with us by the different communities and stakeholders that are advocating for solutions.
Yeah, we've made a subtle change in society since I've grown. I'm pretty old, so I go back quite a bit. We've gone from critical thinking to thinking critically. That's the part that bothers me more than anything, and that I feel is the challenge, not just as a party, but us as people, where, we need to figure out a way to get a message out there that is listened to completely, as opposed to, I'm going to say a sentence, now you know everything I mean.
Yes, and I think obviously when we have dialogue, we have to unpack some assumptions. We have to think about, some of our own unconscious biases, that come from, experiences that we might have or things that we've grown up with. But at the end of the day, we are all here, in the time that we have on this amazing planet that we have, in a very blessed country that we have, with some very, very similar needs, right? We want the best for our families. We want the best for our chosen families, for the communities that we built. We want to have meaningful lives where we can thrive and pursue our passions. We want to be able to afford like basic necessities for ourselves, but also, save for the future and save for that time when we're winding down our lives. And we want to be able to give something to the next generation. And I think when we remember those things that bind us, those things that are common to us, it actually makes all of the quote unquote division that's actually being sold to us, it makes it laughable. We have much more in common than what we actually think and what we are led to believe. And when we focus on that, I think we can actually rise above the noise and actually start focusing on how to build and remake the society into a place that's going to be great for future generations.
Well, Canada's always been a place where racism resides. It always has been, right from the moment that we landed here. Aboriginal folks were displaced. Even when you talk about early Canada, upper lower Canada, French, English, it went on. I experienced it as a young boy. My background is Italian, and the question I'm going to ask you, I could tell you the story, but I won't waste your time. The the thing is, racism runs differently. I'll put it this way: when I was a young boy, we were a visible minority. Now, most people might say, "Well, how can you consider you're white? You're Italian. You're white." Well, here's how I'll tell you: we were a visible minority. I looked for an opportunity to work at CTV. I sent my resume, and they asked me if I was willing to change my name. And when we walked around the street, they knew who we were. We spoke a different language. And so I understand racism. I've experienced it. How can we, you know, the other thing is because I've been here long enough, the concern that I have is the reaction of, your constituency is different than a constituency in Ontario up north, whether it's here or somewhere else close to here. How important is it for the party to pay attention to your constituency and also remember there's a bigger constituency? In the US they have that term white lash. I'm sure you know what I mean. So basically, folks, it's people rejecting inclusion because they feel it excludes them. How important, or what place are we in that regard here in Ontario? Do you see a problem in that regard, and do you see a solution for it?
I'm not going to deny that there are, challenges in how we perceive each other, and historically, some of the systems that have been built based on those prejudices. And as a visible minority myself, I know full well what what that means in my day-to-day existence and the existence of friends and family, how they've faced that kind of discrimination. But I don't believe we're a static society. And I don't believe that what the progress that we've made over the years should be discounted. And so while I speak from a place of someone who has experienced these things on multiple dimensions, as a visible minority, from an ethnic background, but also from my sexual orientation, I know what it is to feel discrimination and to experience that, in a very real, visceral way. But I also know and believe, and one of the reasons why I'm running for public office is to make society better. And so I don't believe in defeatism and saying that we are never going to get over these problems. What we do is we improve the system over time. We change the guardrails, or we improve the rules under which we operate and under which we interact. So we try to minimize the impact of those biases. But we also go about having discussions and educating each other, making sure that we can have cultural exchanges, making sure that we can talk across differences, because that's truly the only way. We can't assume to solve all of these just from an academic perspective and think that, we have anti-discrimination laws and therefore all discrimination will disappear. We have to continue doing this. And it's not just the government's job, it's all of our jobs. We build society together. Private sector, public sector, not-for-profits, schools, universities, all of us are part of this project. And I believe that's what people want to participate in. We don't come to Canada, we don't choose Ontario or Toronto as a place to live and expect that we're going to be in our little bubbles. We want that diversity. We want to see the vibrancy of life. And that's something really, really exciting. And that's something that I think a lot of people want. This is the type of Ontario that they want.
I don't know if I agree with that, to be honest with you. I might disagree a little bit. I mean, I look at Markham and I look at Chinese signs that say, we do like to live within our groups. I'm part of a group. I was born in Canada, but my parents came from Italy and they love to live near each other. I think I agree with you, and I'll put it this way. That's my disagreement, that we do tend to want to cloister. But what I will say in support of what you're saying, and I want to make sure that I didn't leave that last comment I made in a negative perspective. The point is that every new group of immigrants that come in, if we help them to understand it, you help my parents understand that, yes, you're not accepted right now. But if you can teach me, their son, their daughter, and through us show that we can belong, equal members of this society, then that becomes a unifier in itself, because nothing helps more than people who've experienced racism and understand that it can be beaten, to help those who are being racially abused. That's why I firmly believe in the biggest, most important thing in Canada is we have experience in learning how to be open to each other and respect each other. Toronto is a perfect example of that. I wasn't trying to disagree with you to start, but all I was trying to say was we do all like to spend time with our kind. Please don't send me cards and letters. By that, I mean, every group of people likes to be in their comfort zone. But your children, my children, they grew up with a different thinking. So there's a lot of hope if people pay attention to what's going on around them. It's like I if I can paraphrase, it's like the pandemic. Don't listen to anybody about whether your health care. Don't listen to the internet. Talk to the people closest to you. They'll tell you the truth. And when it comes to being happy and fighting racism, I talk to my parents. I talk to my mother. I talk to my uncles. I talk to my aunts. And that's how I learned about racism. And that's how I began to defend Canada. I can see what's wrong in Canada. I did at that time, but I understood also that wasn't Canada, that wasn't Ontario, that wasn't Toronto. It was a scant few that unfortunately we hear about more than we do about the people who do support us. So that my long-winded conversation here is just to tell you that I agree with what you're saying. We're just coming at it from different angles.
And that's the beauty of having conversations,
Exactly.
right? The beauty of having conversations is you might start thinking that there's a difference of opinion, or thinking that there's a wide disagreement between two views, and then you realize that you're right, there is much more common. And while we might still have, our own perspectives on this, and of course we have a different upbringing, we have had different experiences growing up, and you live in a different city, but we can still have dialogue, and that I think is ultimately the kind of place that we all want to come to. Why Ontario is so attractive, why Toronto is so attractive to the rest of the world, is because of exactly what it allows us to have. And we can continue building that. And that's what I hope that we're doing together as a Liberal Party, is to create the conditions for that continued dialogue and that continued conversation. And really, it is a privilege to have this conversation. And I want to thank you for opening it up and for your viewers to listen, because if it was a different place, there wouldn't be a free press. If it was a different place, a person like me wouldn't be able to even step forward. And that is something that we're so blessed to have.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Our worst enemy, yours and mine, and everybody else in Ontario and in the world, in fact, is fear. And some people inject fear into a conversation, and that blinds us to reality because fear tends to, that fight or flight thing that happens, right? So you're not thinking rationally, and I like your rational thinking, and I believe that what's really important and what you bring to this conversation, and it's important that people understand this as a person who's a visible minority, and however you identify yourself. um, it's fantastic that you've made it to where you've made it, right? And people assume that you made it there. They just think they don't understand how much work it took and the opportunities that you created for yourself. What are some of the challenges you had? We only have a few minutes left that you can give advice to other people that you feel are like you who may not feel like those opportunities lie for them. How can you help them to understand reaching their goals? Not necessarily just a politician, but you've reached some wonderful goals. You need to be applauded and congratulated for it.
I appreciate that so much. And, I know how blessed I am, but I also know it's not without the sacrifice of a lot of people in my life. I wouldn't be here without my family. I wouldn't be here without my parents and all that they've done. And I know that that resonates with a lot of people in your audience. A lot of, your audience probably comes from parents who've sacrificed their own dreams so that their kids could succeed. And the one thing that I guess I wanted to highlight, and one of the many reasons I've talked about here of running, is exactly that, to set an example for people who may not see themselves in places where, you know, you might not see yourself being, at a bank. You might not see yourself working at a law firm. You might not see yourself working at a tech company. But all of these things are possible. That's what the dream is that everyone comes to in a place like Ontario, in a place like Canada, is that these things are possible for future generations. And so what I'm hoping to do is just by my very presence, help to, you know, activate that imagination for some of the people in the next generation, but also on a more concrete level, actually help open those doors, provide those meaningful pathways to education, give people the security that they need to house themselves, to feed themselves, to clothe themselves, to have that ability to take the basic care of their needs, of their family's needs, so then they can dream big things, so they can build a business, so they can apply to a graduate program, or they can take that job that might take them to the next level. And that's what we're trying to do here as a party. And I really hope that when the time comes for you to vote, that people vote with hope and optimism. As you said earlier, sometimes people think out of fear, but what we're presenting is a plan that is about hope, and that is about a future where we all thrive. And I think that's something that everyone can get behind.
I'll simplify it, why I congratulate you. I'll simplify it for anybody listening out there. If an immigrant comes to this country and has the ability to start a business and that business becomes successful and it's able to compete in Toronto, with other companies in Ontario, or even better in Canada, or even better in the world, that person that starts that job, whoever they are, doesn't matter what their background is, doesn't matter what sex they are, they achieve that success, they create other jobs that fit below that. So from the corporate boss to the vice president to the warehouse manager to the supervisor of that shift to the guy that's working and the children he feeds. This is why I think it's important, and this program's all about this. It's about highlighting the fact that there is no choice between who gets the opportunity, because every good opportunity that leads to a good result is good for everybody. And I like the term a high tide raises all boats, but it's so true, right?
I absolutely believe it. We're about creating opportunities and making the most of those opportunities that exist for people, and giving them new ones where they can continue to explore their passion and their dreams. And I really hope that just having this conversation really opens people up to the true choice that they have. It's not about whether we hunker down or live in fear for for another couple of years, because so many things are happening around the world. But we can meet these challenges head on with a plan and a purpose, but also with hope in our hearts. And I know that sounds a little bit hokey, but I think that's what people need these days. They don't want to live their lives in fear. They don't want to live their lives cowering and worried about, where their um, where their kids are going to end up, or where they are going to end up. They want to worry. They want to be able to, build a nest egg, retire, and then pass on a good life to their kids. And that's what we're hoping to help them with.
Yeah, no matter who you are, what you are, male, female, choice, whatever choices you make, even. The whole trick here is, and the important thing that you have to promise me, and I need my politicians to promise me, is that you'll eliminate bullying in the neighborhood, in the city, in the province, in the country, and in the world. So we've gone a complete circle. This is why people like Putin have to you have to stand up to them, because no one, the one thing we can all agree on, wherever you come from, when you come to this country, you come here looking for peace. You're looking for an opportunity. And I think that even goes for the ones that didn't come from another country, that were born here. So your job is to do that. And I'll give you the last few words that we have. We have about 5 minutes left, and you're more than willing. I'm more than willing to let you take the 5 minutes. So now make your pitch for me. It's your first opportunity to do a little stump speech. What do you got? One for me?
Frank, I'm not. I always say I'm not running to be a politician. I'm running to help, my neighbors, my friends, my community, and that's what I hope to bring forward. Is that sense of just integrity and competence that we need in government. But fundamentally, what we've talked about here is having people who are in charge of making decisions, people with authority. They need to be able to reflect the communities that they come from, and that's what I bring to the table. My family came here over 30 years ago. And as you said, a lot of us are in similar positions where we leave behind lives to build a new one here in Canada. And that's what they wanted for their children. And the place that I'm running is close to my heart, close to my family's heart. It's a
I
place
know
where,
it will.
yeah, my
I know
family
it
lives
will.
in Willowdale. And it was actually the place where we said goodbye to my grandfather. And I know that a lot of people in Willowdale share very similar experiences, very similar stories. And I hope that they see themselves in a little bit of what I've shared today, but your viewers as well. Wherever you are in the province and whatever your background is, there's a member of the Liberal Party team that knows and understands where you're coming from and will fight for you. And that's what we're fighting for together, is for that shared future for this province, and bring people to a place where they can live the lives that they dreamed of, and pass on something great to their kids and build something for the future. So I really just want to thank you for the conversation. It's very rare that we have all this opportunity to unpack issues, but also to not talk in sound bites. I think, hopefully it's come across that a lot of these things are coming from a genuine place. And ultimately that's what we want to see in our leaders. And I hope to be one of them in the future. And I hope that your viewers will place that trust in me and the Liberal Party.
Yep. And for my part, I want to say thank you for sharing your views and helping us to learn a little bit more about you. And if we're going to vote, it has to be, having listened, heard, and tried to understand. So, I hope people, when they vote, don't just vote for the party of their choice. I hope they can listen to the person that's running, because I think putting you on the spot to tell us what you think is very important, and I appreciate you doing that. And I also appreciate this program is all about hope. Our intention all the time with what we do is to ensure people understand that, yes, we identify there are problems. We know there are scary things going on out there, but we should never give up on hope. And the only way to to guarantee hope works is if we listen. And as I said before, I truly believe that, we have to actively listen and take the time to hear what somebody's saying rather than react to the first three words they say and then stop listening.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to talk, but also for your viewers for listening. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. I really look forward to more conversations like this. And for any of your viewers, I'll make it easy. It's paulsaguil.ontario.liberal.ca. If you want to hear more about my story, or if you want to follow the progress of our campaign, paulsaguil.ontario.liberal.ca.
Willowdale Candidate, if you can't figure it out. So if you look into the Liberal Party and you look for Willowdale Candidate, you'll find Mr. Saguil.
Thank you so much again, Frank.
It's been a real pleasure. Who are you rooting for in hockey?
Well, I'm a Leafs fan at heart, so you know, as we've been talking about, it's about maintaining hope even under some crazy circumstances, and that's what I've learned over the years as a Leafs fan.
Hey, you know what?
Hang on to your hope.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked that, because I was afraid you were a Leaf fan. I was worried for you. I'm just kidding. We do a Leaf
Well,
show here.
like I said, we have our differences, and sometimes we have things that we will just agree to disagree.
And you know what? That, like you said, I think you summed up the whole program and what your aim is. I don't want to pigeonhole you, but at the end of the day, you're a new person looking at politics from the perspective of not being a politician, entering it. You do admit that once you get in, there might be some wake up calls that you didn't realize existed, because that's what happens in life. Every time you've had such a wonderful life of so many new positions, you weren't able to predict how everything was going to be when you got there. It's going to be a challenge, buddy. It's going to be a challenge. Good luck with it. I really wish you the best. No, in all seriousness, listen, from one human being to another, your success is my success, and that's the way we look at it on this show.
Frank, thank you so much. Have yourself a great weekend, and to
You
your
too.
viewers, thank you so much.
My pleasure. That was Paul Saguil. He is the Liberal candidate for, of course, Willowdale, Ontario. If you don't know where that is, I knew 855 York Mills. That's where the Rogers television studios were. And that's generally the area that it's in. So I want to thank the hopeful member of Parliament for Ontario Legislature, I should say, Paul Saguil. Thank you for being on the program. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been Candid Frank Live's Open Forum, seen live Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Open Forum, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time. Stay safe out there.